Chapter 1. In a patient exam room somewhere in Mustafu, General Dr. Tsubasa, a round man with glasses and a bushy mustache slouched on a stool across from Midoriya Izuku and his mother Midoriya Inko. Izuku was a short, scrawny 4-year-old boy with 4 freckles on each cheek forming the shape of a diamond and viridian green fluffy hair that matched his eyes. Inko was an average-height slender woman at 5 feet 6 inches with straight hair and eyes that matched her son's in color. Well, after several tests, it's safe to say the boy is quirkless. He turned to Izuku. You should probably just give up. Dr. Tsubasa lazily stated to a catatonic Midoriya Izuku and his wide-eyed mother. Inko before sitting up as if remembering something important. You know, there's one more test I could run, just in case. The doctor said with infuriating vagueness. Inko stood up so abruptly that the stool she was sitting on wheeled away and crashed into the wall, eyes blazing. Don't you dare talk to my son that way. No more tests. No more getting my boys' hopes up just to crush them. To his mother's right, Izuku was startled out of his shock. He hardly ever heard his mother shout. She turned to her son with a soft voice. Izuku, we're leaving. You'll never have to see this man again. With that, she used her quirk to grab her son's toy with one hand, and with the other grabbed his hand and marched out to her car. Later that evening, Izuku was commiserating the worst 5th birthday he assumed anyone's ever had while watching All Might's debut clip for what was probably the 1000th time. He heard his mother come into the room quietly. Izuku, I made your favorite, Katsudon. He turned to her with a watery smile. See, can I still be a hero? Inko could see the hope teetering on the edge of despair in her baby boy's eyes. She couldn't believe that doctor. She knew Izuku would likely remember this day for the rest of his life. Well, she wasn't going to aid in crushing his dreams. Even if she was the only one in the world, she would encourage him. It didn't matter how much the prospect of him being in danger without a quirk frightened her. Her heart was in her throat, and tears were threatening to spill over. She cupped his face and wiped his tears as she responded. Izuku, listen to me very closely. The only person that gets to decide what you are capable of is you. If you want to be a hero, you will have to work harder than anyone, and you will still be at a disadvantage. People will discourage you the entire way, but I believe in you and I will support you the entire way. Izuku threw himself into her open arms. She hugged him tight until he eventually cried himself to sleep. After tucking Izuku into his bed with All Might-themed sheets, she went into her room and opened her laptop. She was done procrastinating. She was going to sign up for online law classes right now. How could she tell Izuku to chase his dreams without doing so herself? She would fight for the discriminated and those labeled vigilantes. She knew that if a civilian fought back against a villain with their quirk, they would likely be charged with vigilantes. A scared civilian did not equal a vigilante. She would be her version of a hero. She would have to lower her hours at the hospital and be careful with the budget, but it was worth it. Even after discovering her husband's secret overseas family and taking him for everything in the divorce along with child support, money was still tight on a nurse's salary. Several months later, his mother was certainly right. The second his quirkless diagnosis came to light, his best friend turned on him, his classmates turned on him, and even the teachers turned on him. They viewed him with open derision, and when he stated he still wanted to be a hero, the cold stares of the students turned into barbed words. The dismissal of the teachers turned into turning a blind eye to the abuse, if not outright encouraging it. And worst of all, the casual insults from his best friend Kaken turned into violent beat-downs at every turn. No, not Kaken. His friend was gone. Only the bully Bakugu remained. Izuku was at recess at the nursery school when he heard the telltale sound of crackling and the smell of caramel that preceded Bakugu's quirk activating. He turned around and saw a girl, a short distance away by the trees, crouched in the dirt with Bakugu looming over her threateningly. The girl had light blonde hair kept up in 2 messy buns. So pretty, so cute. Despite the situation, the girl had a too wide smile revealing elongated canines on top and bottom like a cat's, and a look of pure adoration in her eyes as she stared at whatever she held in her hands. As Izuku made his way closer, he noticed that she had blood on the corner of her mouth and was cradling a dead bird in her open palms close to her chest. Bakuga slapped the bird out of her hands. What's that disgusting look on your face? You're nothing but a villain waiting to happen. I'll just put you down now. Izuku knew what was coming next. Even at 5 years old, Bakuga's quirk packed a punch. He threw himself in front of the girl, back to her, arms shielding his face. Boom! Pain flared through his arms and chest. You trying to act like a hero when you're just a worthless Deku? Leave her alone. If I'm acting like a hero, then what does that make you, Bakugo? He knew he had made a mistake when he saw the unbridled rage in his friend-turned-bully's eyes. He stood his ground in front of the girl, but it took everything he had to weather the storm. He wasn't sure how much time had passed until the bell rang, signaling the end of recess, and with it TCH. Bakuga spun on his heel and marched away. Izuku dropped his now bruised, bloody, and scorched arms to the sides of his equally damaged torso. He turned around to check on the girl and saw that she was still smiling and looking at him with the same look she had been looking at the bird with, pure adoration. This close, he could see that the pupils of her eyes were slits like a cat's and unfocused, as if trying to take in everything about his bloodied appearance at once. Cute, the girl said. Are you okay? He stuttered out in pain and embarrassment as he offered her his hand to help stand. The blonde's eyes focused, and their eyes met for the first time. Why did you help me? She asked as she took his hand and stood. He cocked his head to the side in question. Why wouldn't I? If someone needed help, you helped them. Everyone knew that. Right. Disappointment evident in her voice, she replied. Not everyone. Gesturing to the now empty playground save for one teacher waiting on them impatiently. He blushed. Great. Apparently he had muttered that last bit. She was smiling again, but this time it was small, filled with mischief. You're nice, I like you. She stated matter-of-factly. I'm Toga Himiko, what's your name? Izuku was about to faint, and he wasn't sure if it was due to pain or embarrassment at the possibility of misinterpreting what she said. Shakily he replied, Midoriya, Izuku. I'm going to lay down for just a second. Izuku fell to the ground as consciousness left him. By the time he woke up, he was in the nurse's office, bandaged, with his mother yelling at the nurse. What do you mean nobody knows what happened? He didn't do that to himself. Izuku shot up. I'm awake. Where's Toga? Inko world. My baby. She went to hug him, but stopped short, remembering his injuries. Her eyes grew hard. Is this Toga the one that did this to you? No, I was protecting her from Baku. He cut himself off. He wasn't sure why he felt the need to cover for Bakugo. Nothing would most likely come of telling anyway. Inko gasped. Kaken did this. She whirled back to the nurse. Where was the adult responsible for watching the kids during recess? There's no way they didn't hear explosions going off. She was starting to get suspicious of this whole situation. She would have to pay closer attention to Izuku's schools from now on. I'm sorry, ma'am. I only know what I was told. To answer your earlier question, Izuku, Himiko Toga was withdrawn from our school by her mother. She won't be coming here anymore. The nurse clarified. Of course, the school had denied anything had taken place, just like he thought would happen. Sure, Aunt Mitsuki had yelled at, threatened, and even forced Bakugo to start attending therapy once a month. It was something at least. He decided it was easier to just hide the evidence of bullying going forward. Even with all his effort, he was pretty sure his mother was onto him. He hated lying to her, but nothing would change except Bakugo would get more violent. So he just kept his head down and hoped to be ignored. Izuku wanted to start training to be a hero, but apparently, it wasn't healthy to start training until he was older. His mother had agreed to take him running with her in the evenings. However, she ended up having to carry him on the way back home most of the time though. Okay, so maybe she was right about waiting until he was older. He still snuck in some push-ups and crunches though. In an attempt to compensate for his lack of physical training, he began doubling down on his hero notebooks. He was breaking down the strengths and weaknesses of not just heroes, but villains and vigilantes as well. If he couldn't overpower his opponents, he would outsmart them. 10 years later, Izuku's 15, Inko's 33. Over the years, Izuku had upped his training. He was now weightlifting at home every day after school, and not just keeping up with his mother on their evening runs, but pushing her to be faster and run longer. He was still lacking actual martial arts training, but hoped to start soon. He was now on analysis notebook number 20, and he could tell was improving just by how amateur his older entries looked to him now. His mother had finished her degree and had already made a name for herself as a lawyer who only took on discrimination and self-defense cases. She hadn't lost a case yet. Izuku, and having quite the day. Summer break had officially started, but Kuga's suicide baited him for the first time. He was attacked by a sludge villain and almost died. Met his idol, was disappointed by his idol, saved Bakugu from the same slime villain, and now All Might was offering him his tutelage and quirk. He had been initially heartbroken by All Might's initial response on that roof, but his mother had warned him, hadn't she? Only he could decide what he was capable of. Izuku mustered as much hardball attitude as he was capable of in the face of his idol. I'll accept on one condition. My mother has to know about all this. I'm done keeping secrets from her. All Might had agreed hesitantly and walked with him the rest of the way home. The second he opened the door, his mother was on him. My baby, you're a mess. What happened? She noticed the deflated All Might awkwardly standing behind Izuku. With faux sweetness, she addressed the strange man. Oh, and who might you be, and how do you know my son? Izuku's sweat dropped. To most people, his mother would sound welcoming. To him, he could hear the undertones and knew what they meant. Inko was seconds away from Mama Bear mode. He quickly interjected. I'll tell you everything later, I promise, but in the meantime, this is a friend, and he has something to tell you. Inko calmed only slightly. She didn't miss that deflection. She gestured to the dining table. Go ahead and sit down. I'll make us some tea. All Might sat down at the table nervously and with as much poise as a newborn horse, while Izuku helped his mother in the kitchen. Once the tea was poured and Inko had let the awkward silence go on long enough to make both Izuku and the strange man nervous, she spoke. So what is it you wanted to tell me, mister? All Might gulped. This woman was more terrifying than most of the villains he had faced. Yagi Tashinori. I believe it will be best to simply show you who I am so you believe me. Please don't scream. With that said, he puffed up into his muscle form. I am here. Inko did a spit take across the table. After Inko had stopped choking and calmed down, Tashinori proceeded to relay everything that had happened that day leading up to that point. Inko was in shock in more ways than one. Well, at least you corrected what you initially told my boy and apologized. Her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping dangerously. You did apologize, correct? Tashinori's eyes widened, and he abruptly turned to a nervous-looking Izuku. Bowing slightly, he replied, I'm sorry for what I said on that rooftop, young Midoriya. I was wrong. Izuku was dumbfounded. All Might, the All Might, was apologizing to him. It's okay. It stung at first, but ultimately, I'm the only one that gets to decide what I'm capable of. Inko was smiling warmly at her boy. The decision to support him fully was the best decision she had ever made. She could tell Tashinori was holding something back about this one-for-all quirk. Suspiciously, she addressed Tashinori. There's something you're not telling us about this quirk. Tell me everything, and don't bother lying. Tashinori internally panicked before relenting. From the beginning, then. Tashinori told the story of two brothers, the creation of OFA, and its users. Izuku was blown away. He knew OFA was a sacred torch handed down from generation to generation, but he had never expected all this. He was really glad he had his mother in his corner asking these questions he might not have gotten the answers to. Inko was beginning to suspect she was just going to be shocked at every other sentence at this point. And you're sure this, all for one, that has been hunting OFA users is dead? Tashinori looked down at his hands guiltily. I crushed his head with my own hands. They never found the body in the aftermath, but I'm sure. At the haunted look that passed over Tashinori's face, Inko eased up a bit. I'm sorry you had to do that. Thank you for telling me. If you can promise me that you will watch over my son in his training, then I have no problems with him receiving your quirk. Tashinori puffed back up into his muscle form, stood, and bowed. I promise. Once Tashinori left the Midoriya's home, Izuku approached his mother reluctantly. He knew this conversation would be hard for both of them. Mother, there are some things I need to tell you that will be hard to hear, but before I start I want to apologize for keeping it from you. I didn't want to worry you. Izuku proceeded to tell his mother everything, Bakugu, the bullying, the suicide baiting, and the teachers turning a blind eye to or outright encouraging the abuse. His mother listened in silence while he listened with heartbreak evident in her features. In trying to prevent her worrying, he had inadvertently hurt her deeply. He promised her that he would never keep secrets from her again. She was the most important person in his life, and he was done lying to her even by omission. Inko was more heartbroken than she was surprised, but she had never suspected the bullying was to this extent. She had tried suggesting Izuku go to a new school a few times in the past to no avail. She had been trying to build a case against Aldera for years now, but didn't have enough to go on. Once high school starts, you won't be going to Aldera, that's but for sure. Izuku was about to argue, but his mother continued. No buts, young man. When I'm through, there won't be an Aldera school district, let alone high school. Inko began muttering to herself in an Izuku-esque fashion. Just need to gather my evidence, call Namuri or Ainin, and have them get me in contact with Nizu. Izuku waved his hand in front of her face to snap her out of it. She was as bad as he was. Mother? Nizu as in Dean of UA? And who is Namuri and Ainin? His mother stopped her mutter spree and answered his questions with a dismissive wave of her hand. Yeah, that Nizu. I'm told he enjoys dismantling subpar schools. He calls it a hobby apparently. Namuri and Ainin are my girlfriend and partner. She added as if an afterthought until she realized what she had said and snapped her head up, eyes wide. Izuku was trying to parse all of that information. His mother was planning on dismantling an entire school district with the aid of the Dean of UA, and his mother had a girlfriend and partner he knew nothing about. Wait, girlfriend and partner? He had to be sure. Inko's head fell into her palms with a slight blush and responded. Yes, I'm sorry I never told you. I wanted to be sure about them first, and Namuri can be a lot. Their jobs also require us to keep things on the down low. We've only been dating for less than a year. I met Namuri on a case. She and Ainin were already dating, and they invited me on a date. But that's no excuse. I love them, and it's past time you met. Izuku was blown away. How had he not noticed his mother dating again? He was certainly happy that she had found someone again. She deserved it. There was one thing that was bothering him, though. How do they know the Dean of UA? His mother looked hesitant, but answered. Well, Tirtha Pro Heroes Midnight 1013, and they work at UA, she rambled out in a single breath. Minimum Seri Midnight 1013. Wait, I've read that 13 prefers they slash them pronouns. Would they not want to be called mom? Izuku muttered. Inko was smiling at how accepting Izuku was. She had never told him outright that she was bi/poly, but she raised her boy right. He didn't have a bigoted bone in his body. You'll have to ask them. Namuri tried proposing to us a few times already, but I told them that you have to accept them first. Ainin agreed to wait for that day. If Namuri heard you call her your new mom, she would lose it. In the teacher's lounge at UA, 29-year-old Kiyama Namuri, aka the 18-plus hero Midnight, a 5 feet 9 inches woman with onyx black hair up in a ponytail, was wearing her casual clothes of leggings, an oversized sweater, and glasses. She sat grading finals while her 27-year-old partner Kuroz Ainin, aka the Space Hero, 13. They were very tall at 5 feet 11 inches and had a spiraling chin-length bob of blue hair that grew lighter closer to the roots, simulating a vortex. They had eyes with black irises that made them indistinguishable from their pupils. Their pupils were rimmed with an almost glowing orange. Their eyes bore a striking resemblance to the first pictures of a black hole. Ainin was wearing their casual clothes of blue jeans, a black button-up shirt with a constellation print, and yellow high-top sneakers with a Velcro strap at the top. Namuri shot out of her seat when a shiver went down her spine. It's finally happening, she screamed, startling her fellow teachers and partner. She began frantically typing on her phone, and Ainin spoke up to her left. Anem? What's going on? Namuri looked at her like it was the dumbest question she had ever heard. I'm reserving a table for 4 at the grotto. It'll be a yes this time for sure. I can feel it. Ainin just shrugged. Who were they to argue with Nem's relationship intuition? It had worked on them after all. With only 7 days before he started his new school, Izuku was sitting on the steps leading down to a now-clean Takoba beach. He had finally packed on some muscle from all the training. He even had the beginnings of a six-pack. He was lost in thought about the whirlwind of activity his summer had been. The very next day after learning about their relationship, Namuri and Ainin had taken him and his mother out to dinner. The restaurant was set in a massive cave with an underground stream running through it. It was the fanciest restaurant he had ever seen. When he had accidentally greeted Namuri as MS. Kiyama Mama, She squealed and hugged him without a second thought. His mother had subsequently told them the story of him calling them his new moms, much to his embarrassment. Anan had told him they liked the title despite it not being gender-neutral, and Namuri had squealed so loud it echoed off the cavern walls. Namuri immediately dropped to a knee and popped the question to both Anan and Inko at the same time, a jewelry box in each hand. Inko had said yes this time, and since Anan had been withholding her answer until Inko agreed too, they too said yes. Inko and his new moms wasted no time getting married. They had a private ceremony on UA's sprawling campus with most of the faculty in attendance. Izuku had never gotten so many autographs in one day before. After the wedding, he had brought Anan and Namuri in on the secret of OFA. He didn't want to force his mother to keep secrets from her wife and partner. They were certainly surprised, but took it quite well. He and Inko were currently in the process of moving in with Namuri and Anan into a massive house on UA's campus. Apparently, Namuri had badgered and bribed Cementos into building it. Then he testified against the Aldera School District along with some of its other victims. He got to see Nizu in action for the first time, and suffice it to say, Aldera School District never stood a chance. Some of Aldera's faculty had even admitted to being an isolated cell of a Quirkist extremist faction calling themselves the New Meta Liberation Army. They even admitted that they intended to foster future sympathizers to their movement. His treatment there had suddenly made much more sense, and so did their praise of their golden child Bakugo. Once the media got hold of the information, the news of the trial spread like wildfire all across Japan. Luckily, Izuku and the other victims were kept out of the spotlight. He was pretty sure it was Nizu's doing. Izuku was brought out of his reverie by the sound of a car door closing. He turned his head to see All Might in his Mr. Yagi form looking at the clean beach with awe. Upon noticing Izuku on the steps, Toshinori poofed into his All Might form and excitement called out, "Young Midoriya, you cleaned everything down to the last scrap, and with days to spare. Good job, my boy." Izuku didn't have many accomplishments to be proud of yet, but he could tell this was something that he would cherish forever. So what now? All Might looked upon his would-be successor with pride. He couldn't be happier in his choice. Now only the act itself remains. Remember, young Midoriya, there are two types of power: power given and power earned. You, my boy, have earned this power. Now eat this. All Might plucked a hair from his head and handed it to Izuku. Izuku looked at the hair for several awkwardly silent seconds before responding eloquently. "Oh, what?" All Might's bravado faltered slightly before responding with uncharacteristic nerves. "Well, you see, it requires a willing transfer of DNA on my part, and while I had planned on boiling a hair in tea, it hadn't expected out to finish so soon, so I'm improvising." Understanding dawned on Izuku's face. "Oh, I suppose that makes sense." He took the offered hair, and with an audible gulp, he swallowed it. "When should it kick in?" "Well, as soon as you digest it, I imagine. Though my master made me eat her toenail clippings up until it kicked in, so I can't be too sure," All Might said with a shrug. Izuku gagged. "Well, I'm glad you're not her." About 30 minutes later, he was beginning to feel something well up inside of him. He turned to the now deflated Toshinori. Suddenly lightheaded, he stammered out, "I think I feel it." He barely got the words out before he passed out. Izuku awoke at night on an island of black sand with nothing but placid water on every side. He looked up, and where he would expect to see countless stars, there were only 9, but something was strange. Each star was a different color, and they were moving. They were orbiting a green star at the center, coalescing, moving closer with each rotation. Izuku was startled when a feminine voice came from his left. "I'll have you know that toenail thing was hilarious." Izuku whipped his head to his left to see a not entirely corporeal woman. She was a tall, very muscular woman with black hair and a spiky ponytail, wearing a retro hero costume. He tried to speak, but found he couldn't. He had no mouth. "You can't speak here yet. You aren't even supposed to be here yet. We don't have much time before you wake, so I'll give you a quick rundown. We're inside of One for All right now. I know Toshi explained that One for All stockpiles power." She gestures to the vast ocean before continuing. "What he doesn't know is that it stockpiles quirks as well as a piece of their wielders." She gestures to the 9 colorful stars before continuing again. "That's why I'm here. I'm the seventh holder of One for All. Izuku's eyes blow wide with that bit of information. A quirk that stockpiles the power, quirks, and personalities? Souls? Minds? Probably best not to think about that, he quickly decides. I can feel you thinking from here, kid. Just remember, quirks are bullshit. As to what's going on in the sky, I might have an idea. Izuku just stared deadpan at her. Don't give that look, brat. Normally those stars don't move. When yours showed up, things started changing. I believe OFA itself is evolving. The stored quirks are melding together. Normally, we would have given you our quirks one at a time when we thought you were ready for them. Now, however, I think you're going to get all of them at the same time, so hold on to your butt, she said, doubling over laughing. After several seconds, she recovered enough to continue. Whatever your quirk is, it's the cause of all this, she said as she gestured to the sky. Okay, now he knew he was either dreaming or had exploded like All Might warned of. He just rolled his eyes waiting for whatever this was to end already. The Amazonian smiled with motherly affection and a hint of sympathy. I know you don't believe me, Squirt, but when you wake up, get another x-ray done, she said, her voice beginning to fade as if moving further away. His vision swam and then blackened once more. Izuku drifted back into consciousness with a splitting headache, feeling more emotions all at once than he thought was possible. There was anxiety, fear, impatience, hope, and despair. Something was off, though. Some of these emotions felt further away, as if he wasn't feeling them. It was an odd sensation, like the difference between smelling a food and tasting it. He wished all feelings would just quiet down a bit. It was overwhelming. The sensation lessened immediately. Against his better judgment, he decided to open his eyes. The synthetic overhead light nearly blinded him, and he winced as his headache intensified. He groaned aloud and massaged his temples. His hand was surprisingly warm, and it made his headache vanish. He finally looked up and around the room. He was in the UA's nurse's office, and there was a small crowd of stunned onlookers. All three of his moms, a deflated All Might, Recovery Girl, and Dean Nizu. They were all staring, slack-jawed with what could again feel as genuine disbelief and an unnatural calm. Hi everyone, sorry for worrying you. Inko recovered first and rocketed to him. Izuku, she cried, tears soaking the sheets as she hugged him. Ainin and Namuri came to Inko's side. Namuri reached out, rubbing circles into Inko's back. She was really worried about you. Ainin's hand came up to ruffle Izuku's curly hair. We all were. You were out for 2 days, she corrected with a smirk thrown towards Namuri. Namuri and Inko had been inconsolable before he woke up. Tashinori walked up to Izuku and bowed. I'm sorry, my boy. I had no idea that would happen. He apologized before straightening. We still aren't sure what happened exactly, but Nizu here has a theory. The mouse? Bear? Dog? He was just going to refer to the mammal as a chimera. The chimera walked up to his bedside and clambered up. I believe you have an invisible quirk that interacted with One for All in an unexpected way. The results of the X-rays should be ready soon. It's so very exciting. He elaborated with a slightly manic grin. Invisible quirk? X-rays? But he already had X-rays done. He was quirkless. What do you mean by invisible quirk? I'm quirkless. Namuri and Ainin just smiled kindly to let him know that they understood and weren't upset. In response to Izuku's question, Recovery Girl wordlessly got up, went to her office, and returned with 3 X-rays. She quickly slapped them up on the illuminated display. No extra pinky joint, no appendix, and no wisdom teeth. You got a quirk, kid. She rushed out. Izuku and his mom stared at the X-rays before shouting in unison, "What?" Nizu was furiously tapping away on his tablet before he spoke up to clarify. Your records show a quirkless diagnosis via X-rays as well as other tests at 5 years old by a 1Dr. Tsubasa. Those test results were faked. Why, I'm not sure. This Dr. Tsubasa alongside his grandson seems to have vanished some 5 years ago. He turned towards All Might. He vanished the exact same day as when you received your injury, All Might. Coincidental timing, wouldn't you say? He had a quirk. Well, an original quirk. Sure. He had no clue what it was, but he had one. Then there was Tsubasa. The implications of that were terrifying. His childhood doctor was possibly connected to the worst villain to ever exist and purposely misdiagnosed him as quirkless. But why? There was one more thing bothering him. Well, two. Earlier when I first woke up, I had a horrible headache, but when I rubbed my temples it vanished like it was never there. I could also sense emotions that weren't mine, and when I wanted them to calm down, they just did. Nizu spoke up before anyone else could. I noticed you stirring immediately, and when you rubbed your temples, there was a faint greenish glow surrounding your hand. As for the emotions, I'm not sure, but right before you opened your eyes, instead of feeling impatient for you to wake, I felt calm. But it was obvious that it was being forced on me. Izuku turned to a still distraught Inko. He could feel. No, he could sense her panic and tried to replicate the same sensation of willing her to calm. The effect was immediate. She whirled on him. I felt that. A gasp. Izuku, your eyes are glowing. As she was reaching to cup his face, he noticed a bruise on her knuckles. Mother, what happened to your hand? Inko gave a sheepish grin. I might have punched All Might when he told me what happened. Luckily, I was in my hero form. She has one hell of a right hook, he said with a laugh. Izuku took his mother's bruised hand and ran his thumb over her knuckles worriedly. Then his hand began to glow and warm. The bruising receded before vanishing entirely. He felt like there was more that he could do, like a second gear, so he shifted it up. Inko's eyes began glowing this time. Everybody was in shock, none more than Recovery Girl. She knew how rare healing quirks were more than anyone. Izuku spoke with excitement. Is that my quirk? Before he could start muttering about possibilities, he was cut off by a strange sensation. Izuku felt more than saw, someone else in the room that wasn't there before. He looked up, and just past everyone was standing the more clearly defined woman from the strange dream. He heard her talk not in his mind, but with his ears. Technically, they're all your quirks now. Everyone save for Izuku spun to face the intruder. Hello, I'm the one and only Shimura Nana, the seventh holder of One for All. Nice to meet ya, Nana cheerily said, as if there was nothing at all strange about her being there. How did you get in here? Namiri demanded. Get behind me, Anan shouted. Great, another person crowding my office, Chio grumbled. Oh my, Nizu said with uncommon surprise. Stay away from my baby, Inko yelled, eyes glowing brightly from her quirk. Master, All Might whispered, looking like he had seen a ghost. Nana smirked with a shit-eating grin. Hey Toshi, you look like shit. All Might immediately coughed up blood and collapsed to the floor unconscious. Nana bent over, holding her sides, laughing and wheezing. Standing up and wiping the tears from her eyes, she explained. They're both more powerful than they used to be, but the first one with the feelings was the third's. It's called empathy. The glowing hand one that heals was the second's. It's called cell activation. Their original owners are both sulking because they couldn't hold their quirks over your head until you impressed them. They'll explain better once they're through acting like children. She huffed. Upon seeing the questioning look on Izuku's face, she continued. Your original quirk was the one that made your mother's eyes glow. I'm pretty sure now that originally it just evolves your quirks and maybe quirk adaptations. Fairly useless by itself, but combined with the power and quirks stockpiled within One for All, it not only evolved every stored quirk, but itself as well. I think it combined with cell activation the same way the first transfer combined with power stockpile. You can forcibly evolve a person's quirk now. Go ahead and give it a try, Mamadoriya. Surprised at suddenly being addressed by this strange woman, she simply complied. She tried lifting something too big for her quirk attraction of small objects to work on normally, in this case, Namiri. A green light enveloped Namiri as she began floating off the ground. She began running her hands all over herself sensually. Ooh, this feels amazing. I have some ideas for this, she said, grinning at Inko, eyebrows wagging suggestively. Nem, not in front of Izuku, Inko said as she dropped Namiri on her ass. While Namiri was massaging her butt and grumbling, Nana spoke up again with a knowing smirk. Well, Squirt, what do you want to name your quirk? Izuku looked down in thought and muttered quietly before replying. Simple is best, so I'll name it. Evolution. Notes. Well, that's my first chapter of my first ever fanfic. As promised, I'll explain some of my changes to canon and why. But first I'll start with some warning in case they're deal breakers for anyone. I know it's rushed, but I promise it slows down after the first chapter. Izuku is heteropoly, and there will most likely be a ton of people in the polycule. Izuku will definitely be overpowered, but so will everyone else, including the villains. I'll be replacing 4 members of 1A. First is Mineta because I hate him and there's no way he would make it past the entrance exams. Second is Masahiro Ojiro because his personality and quirk are criminally boring. Third is Rikido Sato because his personality is boring except for his baking hobby and his quirk makes 0 sense. Imagine if Lida drank orange juice and went full recipro burst until he passed out. Same thing. Fourth is Koji Koda. While I like him, he doesn't bring a whole lot to the table in any meaningful way, and I doubt he would make it past the entrance exams. How do birds and rats beat robots? He's too passive to fight himself. One replacement is Shinso. The 3 other replacements are characters, no OCS. I want to see more of and necessary for the changes I want to see in Izuku. You've probably figured out that one of these characters will be Toga Himiko. She's probably my favorite character, and she has the capability of giving Izuku some confidence and insight into the fact that villains can just be people that have fallen through the cracks of society. Onto the explanations. I've always thought quirk evolutions were the most interesting thing in but it's hardly ever utilized. Izuku's quirk will let me explore all that quirk evolutions have to offer. I made evolution finish OFA so soon because I love Nana and most of the previous holders' quirks. Most fanfics either ignore the other holders' quirks or take forever in handing them out. I made the second's quirk cell activation like the little boys from the movie Heroes Rising because it's a super cool quirk that enables some fun things I want to do. I axed FA Gene because I think when next to OFA it's super redundant and boring. I replaced it with empathy because it'll enable Izuku to truly achieve his goal of making people feel safe and help the polycule form faster than at a snail's pace. I dropped Hisashi off the face of Earth because of 2 reasons. 1. Him turning out to be AFO is cliché as fuck and boring. 2. If he isn't AFO, he has nothing to give the story. He might as well be an OC. I changed up some of Inko's reactions because I wanted her to be a better mom and actually prove she loves Izuku a bit more. Inko gets a polycule because why not? I love Kiyama Mama, and I love Midnight/13. Midnight is also a perfect tool to get Izuku some confidence with girls. 13 is great for teaching non-combat applications of quirks and thinking. She's also super passionate about quirks like Izuku. UA will be a university because why the hell would they teach heroism in high school? A hero school, I imagine, would be pretty similar to a trade school. Specialized classes to learn the craft. Also, I want to age up the characters to justify them being more capable and mature. I made Inko a lawyer for some plot reasons, and to show that she is willing to fight for her own dreams as well, and go full mama bear on anyone that discriminates against Izuku, or anyone else that she loves for that matter. Chapter 2. After rousing a still pale-faced All Might, the group made their way to Gym Gamma at Nizu's suggestion. So how is it possible that you're here, Master? A still very confused All Might asked. I knew I was forgetting something. Nana smiled and snapped her fingers. Like I said before, OFA evolved. It didn't just store the previous holders' quirks, but a part of them as well. I feel much more tangible than before also, although it seems I can't touch anything, she said as she tried to poke Toshi, her finger disappearing into his chest. Anyways, Nana said dismissively, onto quirks. Let's start with mine since it's the coolest. My quirk was called Float. It let me do just that. It was only basic levitation at first. After OFA, it was more like flight, although not very fast. Just try and focus on the feeling of being free, with nothing able to hold you down, she said, closing her eyes, reminiscing. Oh, okay. Here goes nothing, I guess, Izuku said, closing his eyes to focus. He tried to picture himself soaring among clouds, lazily running his fingers through them. He could feel his feet begin to leave the ground. It's working, he thought. He tried to move a bit more and immediately launched upwards at breakneck speed, followed by a boom as he burst through the skylight and broke the sound barrier. In his panic, he disengaged Float and began to fall. He flailed and screamed, H. As he neared the roof of the building, the now inflated All Might jumped up and caught him, landing safely through the broken skylight. Once back on the ground, he turned to Nana, who was laughing as Inko was trying to swat at her with her purse. Why, you knew that would happen, Izuku exclaimed. Yeah, But now it doesn't seem as scary, right? She challenged. Well, I guess not, but you could have told me to wear a helmet at least. Izuku groused. PSH. Builds character. Anyway, float is not only much more powerful, it seems to shield you from most of the wind resistance. Now that you mention it, I didn't feel much wind resistance, even though I'm pretty sure I broke the sound barrier. Izuku half muttered with his chin in his hand. No more stunts like that, Inko said, raising her voice. Fine, fine, can't have any fun, Nana grumbled playfully. Let's get this show on the road. The sixth will take over while I go slap the bitch out of the second and third. The second Nana disappeared. A man with black hair and a high-collared coat appeared where she had been. I am the sixth, and my quirk was smokescreen. It allowed me to produce clouds of smoke from my body. It was a double-edged sword, however, as it blocked my vision as well. However, I suspect that may no longer be the case. Try it out. Feel it build up before releasing it. And said. Izuku focused on trying to narrow down the feeling of smokescreen. A few others were chomping at the bit to be let out, but he managed to focus on the one. He felt it build for a second before releasing the sensation. A black smoke exploded from his body, filling the entire gym and completely obscuring his vision. Wait, I can see something, he thought. Through the smoke, he could see everyone except N. They glowed orange and grew lighter in color on their extremities. He was amazed at the level of detail he could see. He could make out their faces perfectly. Whoa, I can see you all. It's thermal vision, he exclaimed excitedly. Nizu pressed a button on his tablet, and the fans kicked on, clearing out the smoke. Unless someone has a very cold body temperature or can block their heat signature somehow, smokescreen essentially has no downsides now. Except for blinding your allies, of course, and said. Now it's the fifth's turn. And disappeared, and a large bald man wearing goggles and a lot of leather appeared. A fellow person of culture, I see, Midnight said, gesturing to her dominatrix outfit, followed by her wife and partner quickly swatting her on the arms. The man looked like he had been slapped across the face. Motorcycles. I rode motorcycles. The sixth said. Motorcycles. Midnight air quoted, not believing the man. Shaking his head in defeat, the man turned to Izuku. I'm Daigoro Banjo the fifth, and my quirk is the coolest. It's called Black Whip. Huh. Knew it. Midnight crowed victoriously, cutting off Banjo. Ugh, is she always like this? Banjo asked Izuku, gesturing with his thumb to Namuri. You'll get used to it, or so I'm told, Izuku said with an almost haunted look in his eyes. Banjo threw Midnight a glare. As I was saying, Black Whip allowed me to launch out tendrils that I could trap villains with or use to move around. It's connected to your subconscious, so it has a semi-sentience. If your emotions are out of control, so is it. It's also way more powerful now, so be careful. Izuku focused on the feeling from earlier that wished for action. He carefully let it out. An inky black tendril coated in green, barely visible luminescent energy emerged from his palm. It was slow at first, wriggling out longer until Izuku had the errant thought, I wonder how many of these I can make. As if in answer, countless tendrils sprang to life as he began to resemble an eldritch being. Izuku was worried at first, but the tendrils remained calm. Go back to one and stab the floor, he tried mentally commanding it. The tendrils immediately reduced to one and jabbed deep into the concrete floor. Ooh, what about shapes? Make claws on my fingers, Izuku mentally commanded again. Black tendrils enveloped all 10 of his fingers, creating long claws. He could feel them like they were his own fingers. He bent down and slashed at the concrete. They went through it like butter, carving deep furrows. What did I say? Coolest quirk ever, Banjo exclaimed. It seems to be much easier to control, and being able to make shapes like that is definitely new. Yeah, Izuku agreed. I could also feel with them when they were like that, Izuku said, releasing Black Whip. Oh ho ho, your future partners are in for a treat, Midnight said teasingly, causing Izuku to go bright red with the implications. Ainin and Inko slapped their wife on the arms again, causing her to grumble under her breath. Never have any fun. Uff, I do not envy you, kid. Banjo groaned. The fourth will take over now, he said as he vanished. Next to appear was a massive man as tall as All Might with medium-length blonde hair and a scar that looked to be from a claw. I am the fourth, Hikage Shinomori. My quirk is called Danger Sense. It would warn me of any potential threats to my person, even intent to harm or negative emotions after I received OFA. It could cause sensory overload and was more painful the higher the threat. Reaction time also plays into effectivine dash. Hikage was cut off by Nizu throwing a pin at the back of Izuku's head. Izuku felt a light nudge as to the direction and time slowed. He could still see Hikage's mouth moving in slow motion as he spun around only to see Black Whip swatting the pin out of the air. Ness, but I believe that it now dilates your perception of time and has interactions with the other quirks. Hikage finished weakly. Banjo reappeared. Black Whip, coolest quirk ever, he said and promptly disappeared again. My, that is certainly a useful quirk Midoriya. How painful was it? Nizu queried without a hint of remorse. It wasn't painful at all actually. It felt like a subtle nod to which direction the threat came from, Izuku stated after giving Nizu an incredulous expression. Count yourself lucky then, ninth. That quirk gave me chronic anxiety to the point I left civilization behind entirely. Hikage finished before disappearing without another word. Good. I don't think I can handle any more anxiety, Izuku muttered quietly. Nana appeared after a few seconds, holding two figures under each arm in schoolyard headlocks. She released one. Now act your age, children. The first to speak up was a man with blonde hair and a ponytail and a piece of fabric covering his hairline. Fine. I'm the third. My quirk is called empathy. You already saw the effects earlier, though when I had it I could only sense other people's emotions, not influence them. Test out its limits on range and number of targets, he said reluctantly, and without any fanfare, he disappeared. The other figure finally squirmed his way out of Nana's grasp. He was the spitting image of Bakugo, only older. He pointed a finger in Nana's face. Who do you think you are? He shouted point blank. Yup, got to be related to Bakugo, Izuku thought. The man spun and his rage fell off his face. I've seen your memories, and if that brat is related to me, you have my express permission to slap the shit out of him, the man said. Traitor, Izuku declared his tongue. You are no hero, child. You do not deserve the power you have been given. What will you do when faced with a villain too dangerous to be left alive? Spare them, only for them to kill again, the man challenged. You've seen my memories, so you know I earned this power with blood and sweat, and I will continue to earn it. As for killing a villain, I know that it can be unavoidable. Even All Might was forced to kill All for One. I can only try to be ready if a situation like that arises for me as well, Izuku replied with as much conviction as he could about killing someone. The man stared at him for what felt like minutes before nodding. Very well, but make no mistake, that day will come, ready or not. Izuku could only nod in response. I am the second. My quirk is called Cell Activation. It can be used to increase regeneration, recovery time, and even permanently improve overall physical condition. It used to be activated by touch, usable on myself or others, but it drains stamina fast. Now, however, it seems to be tied to OFA's power instead of your stamina and is passively always active on yourself. The second blew out a breath. And it seems to have latched onto your original quirk, evolution. You can freely evolve others' quirks now. But heed my words, boy. Do not go handing that power out to people unless you trust them with your life, the second warned as he vanished. What a lovely gentleman, Inko said, words dripping with sarcasm. Welp, see you around, kid, and remember, I'm always watching, Nana said, pointing to her eyes as she began to slowly disappear. Oh, and Toshi, she said, her face softening with maternal love. I'm so proud of you. All Might deflated, spurting a small amount of blood. Then tears began slowly trailing down All Might's face. Thank you, mother, he said quietly as Nana disappeared. Izuku could sense the relief and love radiating off the man in waves. He slowly approached his mentor and hugged him while simultaneously activating cell activation and evolution. They stayed that way for a minute before Toshinori broke the hug. Thank you, my boy. I feel much better, But I don't think I'm fully healed yet, and I don't think evolution will work for me since I'm only using leftovers of a quirk now, and I was originally quirkless. You were quirkless, and you had the nerve to dash our boys' dreams, Inko said with quiet anger. Ainin and Namuri were quick to pull her into a hug. Now, now he already apologized and corrected his mistake, Inko. No need to beat a dead All Might, Ainin said soothingly. Tashinori looked down, ashamed. I am sorry, my boy. I've never been more wrong. Izuku was quick to reassure Tashinori. I forgave you a long time ago, All Might. I know you only had my safety in mind. A new figure coalesced. This time it was a white-haired, too-thin man. Hello, Ninth. I am the first, Yoichi Shigaraki, an unfortunate brother to AFO. Your quirk was exactly what was needed to finally finish OFA, and you're lucky it did the way it did. Normally, having multiple quirks reduces your lifespan by about half. Everyone, namely Izuku's moms, gasped. My baby, Inko wailed as she began to fountain tears. Yoichi continued unabated, because when your quirk interacted with OFA, it didn't just complete it and evolve its stored quirks. It combined all of the quirks into one multifaceted quirk. The quirks may interact in yet unforeseen ways. Your lifespan will not be cut short. In fact, cell activation may prolong it. Yoichi reassured, much to Inko's relief. Well, that's a relief. Izuku breathed out the breath he was holding. Remember, Ninth, this power is yours, Yoichi said as he disappeared. Ainin walked up to Izuku and ruffled his hair while producing a notebook. I wrote down everything they said. Izuku threw himself into their arms, hugging them. I love you, Mom. Izuku activated evolution. Who could he trust more than his moms? The orange ringing their eyes blazed like a dying sun. Did you just evolve my quirk? They asked, looking down. He just nodded in answer. Well, I can normally only fully use my quirk with my suit on, but let's try just one finger at a time. 13 pointed their index finger out to the gym and activated black hole. The suction came to life, sulking up loose debris on the floor. They added another finger, and another until they had all 10 fingers pointed forward with black hole activated. A previously impossible feat. Only one thing left to test, Ainin said, bringing black hole back down to one finger and pointed it closer to their leg. No, don't, Ainin. Namuri cried out, knowing exactly what they were thinking. Nothing happened. 13's genes fluttered a bit, but that was it. Cool, they said simply. Namuri marched up to her partner and pouted while jutting her hip out. You could have been seriously hurt. Again. Again. Izuku yelled in surprise. When my quirk first manifested, it tore up my leg pretty badly. But the good news is I seem to be immune to my own quirk now, Ainin said, slightly ashamed. Izuku pinched the bridge of his brow. He worried about how much of a space case his mom was sometimes. Your turn, Mama, Izuku said as he hugged Namuri with evolution active. Her eyes glowed purple before he released her. Namuri kissed Izuku on the forehead before moving away from the group. Nizu, turn on the fans, please. She started pumping out her quirk. A thick cloud of pink enveloped her, but didn't move towards the vents. Nizu, did you turn on the fans? She questioned, confused. Fascinating. Try willing it to move, Nizu said in a way of answer. Namuri, raising an eyebrow, did as asked. The pink cloud moved around in circles around her, expanded, and condensed until it was a liquid on the floor. Whoa, I can control it telekinetically now. Wow, that will be so useful outside, or in places with good ventilation, or against someone waving an arm hard enough. Namuri rambled excitedly. Ainin nudged Izuku. You're not the only quirk nerd. I heard that. Namuri pouted. Izuku turned to Recovery Girl, who had been oddly quiet the entire time, to find her half asleep resting against her syringe cane. He walked closer. I'm sorry, Recovery Girl. You must be wanting to go home. Ah, it's okay, boy. Had to make sure I was here if you got hurt, she said, smiling tiredly. Izuku crouched down and brought her into a gentle hug, activating both cell activation and evolution. Her eyes glowed faintly, and she stood up straighter. I feel 10 years younger. Now, Izuku said, turning to Nizu, if you decide to overthrow the earth, please spare my loved ones. He reached out a glowing hand which Nizu took immediately. His eyes glowed with otherworldly power. Then the cackling began. After about 5 minutes of fearing he had just created the first eldritch god, Nizu quieted and straightened his tie. I have been such a fool. No security cameras outside the front gates and beyond, blind spots in the sports arena, and so much more. I have many things to improve. Nizu finished dangerously. Well, I guess all there's left to do is try out the strength enhancement. Izuku thought aloud. All Might, how do you activate it? Tashinori buffed up into his muscle form. Squeeze your butt cheeks together and yell smash from the bottom of your heart. All Might explained. Izuku positioned himself, facing the far wall. Well, here goes nothing, he thought as he squeezed his butt cheeks together and yelled. Smash. Danger sense nudged heavily in every direction and time slowed to a crawl. Nana popped into existence. Stop. She yelled surprisingly not in slow motion. He cut the power to OFA. Nana whirled on All Might. What were you thinking? Clench your butt cheeks, what the hell kind of advice is that? Nano admonished. Kid, OFA is way more powerful than when old meathead over here had it, she said, pointing a thumb to a thoroughly ashamed All Might. Try a tiny amount and work up from there, Nana actually instructed. Izuku focused on the unending ocean of power that was one for all. He tried using only a small portion, what he assumed to be 5%, and punched. A gust of wind followed the punch. Within the confines of the building it was enough to burst the remaining skylights. Whoa, that was only about 5% and my arm still ended up hurting, he said, but before he could finish cell activation, healed the minor tears in his arm's muscles. Never mind, cell activation already healed it. Wait a minute. Doesn't that mean I can put on muscle practically instantly? Izuku said, having a revelation. Now you're cooking with neurons, Nana replied, flexing her massive biceps as she disappeared. Just don't overdo it, sweetheart. I signed you up for a martial arts gym. We're going to meet your trainer tomorrow, his mother said. Chapter 3. After pointedly ignoring his mother's suggestion of not overdoing it, Izuku proceeded to exercise through the night, drinking protein shakes every hour. By morning he had gained 10 pounds of raw muscle, and he was barely even tired. Cell activation was amazing. He only stopped exercising when he heard his mother exit her bedroom that she shared with his mama and mom. He set his alarm to go off in 1 minute, and after silencing his alarm, he pretended to yawn. After taking a much-needed shower, he emerged from his room to greet his mother in the kitchen and help her make breakfast, as was routine for him at this point. Upon entering the kitchen, he found his mother eyeing him with suspicion, hands on her hips. Why is the protein powder out, young man? Inko questioned. A late-night snack, Izuku answered unconvincingly. And why do you look like you put on more muscle, as if overnight? She continued to interrogate. Izuku looked down at his clothes, his white shirt, that red pajamas, and black workout shorts to see that they were visibly straining against his newly acquired muscle. Sorry, he answered, not meeting his mother's questioning gaze. Honestly, Izuku, I know you're excited about your new Quirks, but you need to moderate yourself. Please, Izuku, his mother pleaded. I'll try, I promise, he responded. That's all I ask, sweetheart, his mother said with a kind smile. The moment ended when he heard a door closing. He turned to see a bleary-eyed Namuri stumbling into the hallway. Good morning, she grumbled before pausing. Whoa, Izuku, did you get bigger? His mama asked mischievously. 10 pounds, actually, he replied with some pride. My little lady killer is going to kill it on his first day of school, Namuri exclaimed. Nem, maybe he isn't into just ladies. His mother reprimanded her wife. He is. We talked about it. He might yet even be poly. Imagine all the grandbabies, Inko. Namuri all but yelled. His mother was on him immediately, squeezing him so hard that cell activation triggered. So many grandkids. She paused, letting him go. Whenever you're ready, of course, she quickly clarified. His mom appeared in the hallway then, looking even more bleary-eyed than his mama had been. What is all the yelling about? Anan asked, voice raspy from sleep. We're going to have so many grandkids, Namuri yelled out in response. What? His mom asked, suddenly awake and staring at him with wide eyes. After sorting out that fiasco, Izuku was now on his way to where he would be learning martial arts, Ogre's Gym. His mother had said she knew the owner from the same case she had met Namiri on. After pulling up to a rundown building that said Ogre's Gym in unlit neon signs, he turned to his mother with a questioning, raised eyebrow. Trust me, Izuku, this guy is the real deal. I got him off of some vigilante charges. Inko answered the unasked question. Vigilante? Who? Izuku quickly asked. If his mother had represented him, he knew that the vigilante had to be of the good variety, not like Stendhal. He knew most vigilantes from his notebooks. Maybe he already had him in one? He went by Knuckle Duster. Inko supplied. Wow. He resolved more crimes in Narahata than any hero. His quirk is still a mystery. I wonder if I can figure it out. Izuku exclaimed, beginning to mutter. Inko tapped her son on the shoulder to prevent more ramblings. Come on, Izuku. We don't want to be late. Upon entering the dilapidated gym, Izuku saw a man waiting for them. He was massive and would give Endeavor a run for his money for stature. He had a large scar running diagonally across his face. He seemed to have a permanent, audacious smirk that all but promised violence. There you are, Pipsqueak, the towering man greeted. Hello, sir. Izuku nervously greeted. Enough pleasantries. Let's see you throw a punch, he said as he gestured to the heavy bag behind him. Oh, okay, Izuku said as he walked up to the ragged punching bag. He straightened his back and threw his fist forward, thumb tucked inside his fist as hard as he could without activating any quirks. After a soft slap sound and a sore thumb, he turned to Mr. Aguro. What the fuck was that? The man questioned while Inko looked displeased. Don't tuck your thumb like that unless you want to break it. And you threw that punch with nothing but your arm. You gotta throw a punch with every muscle, all the way up from your toes to your knuckles. Watch me. Mr. Aguro stepped in front of the bag, nudging Izuku aside. He took up an experienced stance, legs shoulder-width apart, left arm gauging the distance. Then in a flash, Izuku could see the muscles tense in a chain reaction of movement all the way from his feet to his fist. As opposed to Izuku's pathetic attempt, the sound Aguro's punch made was a boom as the heavy bag lurched and its chains rattled. Now that's a punch, Aguro yelled. Izuku was in awe. With all the hero fights he had seen, that was the most impressive punch he had ever seen. Was that your quirk? Izuku asked. The man smiled a shit-eating grin at him. I'm quirkless Pipsqueak. Izuku was in awe. He hadn't felt this way since the first time he watched All Might's debut video. This man was quirkless, and despite that, the man was Knuckle Duster, the vigilante hero of Narahata. He had just met the man, but he already knew Mr. Aguro would be an inspiration to him for his entire life. Suddenly, the sound of feet stomping downstairs could be heard. Oi, I thought you were done with classes for the day, old man, yelled out an annoyed feminine voice. Rounding the corner was a girl his age. She had tawny skin, snow-white hair, ruby-red eyes, and an obvious rabbit mutation quirk. She was wearing black running shorts and a white tank top that said Space Jam on it. She obviously trained often, judging by how the clothes clung to her toned form. Izuku's face warmed as she caught him staring at her. Who the fuck is this? The rabbit girl asked. Rumi, this is the Midoriyas. They're customers, so watch your fucking language. Mr. Aguro answered. And nice to meet you. Izuku bowed. Tell you what, kid, instead of classes, I'll train you personally alongside Rumi here in exchange for a favor. Aguro started. What favor? Izuku asked. You'll be going to the same school as my adoptive daughter Rumi here. She barely passed middle school, and I'm no better, so I can't help her. Your mother says you're one smart cookie, so if you tutor her on Sundays, I'll train you personally after school. Aguro said. What? I don't need help. I'm no weakling. Rumi retorted. Needing help doesn't make you weak, Rumi. Don't learn the hard way like I did. Aguro yelled back. Izuku was feeling a bit uncomfortable witnessing this familial squabble. He could feel Rumi's emotions waver when she said she didn't need help. He wasn't sure what that signified. If she'll have me, then I accept, Izuku said, not wanting to force the girl into something she didn't want. After a long silence, Rumi responded, Fine, but I'm not going easy on you in spars. Izuku could only nod before the girl stomped back upstairs. Mr. Aguro looked ecstatic. That went way better than I thought it would. She didn't even kick you. It was the first day at Izuku's new school, Naba Middle. After the experience of meeting Rumi yesterday, he wasn't sure what to expect if he saw her at school. After arriving, he headed towards the front entrance. He was wearing a school uniform that was almost identical to Aldera's. After entering the new hallways, he saw someone bump into a girl, causing her to drop the papers she was holding. The girl quickly waved off the offending person when they turned to ask if she needed help, but he could feel the girl's irritation. Without asking if she wanted help, he quickly moved to help the girl gather her papers. After a minute, almost all the papers were picked up, and the girl asked, "Why did you help me?" Still gathering the last papers, he answered without looking up, "Why wouldn't I?" What a weird question, he thought. If someone needs help, you help. If you're hungry, you eat. If you're tired, you sleep. Izuku, is that really you? She breathed out. Not expecting to know anyone here, let alone someone that would use his given name with such familiarity, he snapped his head up to get a look at the girl. Familiar yellow feline eyes were staring at him, and it was like he was back in that schoolyard again all those years ago. Her blonde hair was down instead of in messy buns, but he would never fail to recognize her, even 10 years later. She looked amazing in the school's black sailor uniform with a red sash. He could feel so much hope radiating off her, as well as fear. He realized that he had been staring, and she was still waiting for him to answer. "Toga Himiko," he said while nodding to her question. Relief pulsed off of her in waves. Still kneeling close together, she pulled him into a crushing hug. "I thought I'd never see you again." Before he could pass out from being hugged by a girl, the bell rang. "Oh no, I don't know where Class 1A is," he thought. "I know where it is. Come on, Izuku," she supplied, having heard his muttering. She grabbed his hand and began pulling him along as he sputtered and blushed. Once they reached the classroom doors, they were greeted by a woman waiting for them. She had purple eyes that matched her flowing hair of wisteria blooms. She raised an eyebrow at their connected hands, but didn't say anything about it. "You must be Midoriya and Toga. I'm your homeroom teacher, Miss Sato. It's a pleasure to meet you," she greeted, and after they both greeted her in kind, she continued, "You're both new to the school district, so I'm going to be introducing you. Midoriya, you'll be first. Come in when I call for you." Himiko was still gripping his hand as if he would disappear if she let go. Still resembling a strawberry, he turned to her. "I am surprised you all remembered me," he said, breaking the silence. She turned her head from where she had been staring blankly at the classroom door to meet his gaze. "I would never forget my hero," she said while rubbing her thumb over his knuckles. Before Izuku could pass out, he heard the teacher call him in. Himiko released his hand, and he walked into the classroom. "Go ahead and introduce yourself," Miss Sato said while gesturing to the waiting class. "I am Midoriya Izuku. I hope we get along," he greeted nervously. He really hoped the school uniform was the only thing this place had in common with Aldera. "What's your quirk?" a somewhat snide voice asked. Izuku looked up to see a blonde-haired boy smirking derisively at him. It does a lot of things, so I just call it superpower. It's a stockpiler that only manifested a few days ago due to its complicated nature." He supplied the cover story that Nizu himself had cooked up. It was vague, and due to the nature of stockpilers, the lateness could be explained away. "Useless then," the blonde sneered. Izuku looked down at his red high-top shoes. He could feel the hope that this school would be different from Aldera Crumble. "I'm really useless anywhere, aren't I?" he thought. "Shut up, Monoma. Just because you can't copy his quirk doesn't mean it's worthless," an aggressive voice called out from the back of the class. "To me it is," Monoma snidely commented. Izuku looked up in surprise. The boy didn't mean that he was useless, only because he couldn't copy his quirk. He looked to see who had called out the rude boy and recognized Rumi in the back corner with her feet up on the desk, wearing ankle warmers. Wait, you can copy quirks that aren't stockpilers? That's so cool. How do you copy them? How many? How long? What about mutation types? Do you automatically know how they work once you copy them? Do they feel different? Can you have multiple active at a time?" Izuku rambled out his questions. Miss Sato clapped her hands. "Okay, let's move on. Midoriya, go ahead and take the seat next to Aguro in the back." Izuku went beet red, realizing he had been rambling about Quirks. He quickly made his way to the open seat to Rumi's right. After sitting down, he looked to her. Thank you, Aguro-san, for saying that. Rumi smirked. Call me Rumi. I hate formalities, and don't mention it. Monoma is an asshole, and I could tell you were misinterpreting what he said. Ms. Sato called out for Himiko to come in. She walked into the class, but she was wearing a look that seemed unnatural on her. He almost couldn't recognize her. It was like she was wearing a mask. She's dangerous, Rumi said to herself quietly enough for only Izuku to have heard. He knitted his eyebrows together. Why would she think Toga is dangerous? He thought. Rumi looked at him and whispered, It's part of my quirk. I can sense the danger someone would pose to me. He was so sick of muttering, but while that was a cool aspect of a quirk and really similar to danger sense in a way. Himiko gave a similar introduction as him while they were whispering, Monoma immediately asking the same question he had asked Izuku. My quirk is called Transform, Himiko answered curtly. How does it work? Monoma rudely asked. Though Himiko's mask didn't falter, Izuku could feel so much fear coming from Himiko that he almost gagged at the sensation. I can transform into someone else, but I have to love them, she hesitantly said. Izuku could feel her emotions waver when she mentioned love. Maybe it means they're lying? But why would she lie about the requirements of her quirk? Love could mean a lot of things. Maybe the truth was just inappropriate for the setting. He mused to himself. Monoma scoffed. Another useless quirk. Monoma, I gave you the benefit of the doubt, but you just earned yourself detention after school. I won't have any discrimination in my class, am I clear? Ms. Sato said, eyeing Monoma in a challenge. Momoma hung his head. Yes, ma'am. Toga dear, go ahead and take the seat to Midoriya's right, Ms. Sato said. The second Himiko sat down, the girl occupying the seat in front of him spun around in her seat. She had welding goggles pushed up to her hairline of pink dreadlocks and had yellow eyes with crosshairs for pupils. She had dark bags under her eyes and had a manic smile directed at him and Himiko. You have to love someone for your quirk. How do you know you love them? Do you get their quirk? Why do you have cat eyes? They're pretty. Do you have claws? I'll make you some. And you? She yelled, turning her focus to Izuku. What exactly does your quirk do? Why was it so late? That's weird even for a stockpiler. Why is your hair so fluffy? I'm going to touch it, she asked, getting more excited with each question and beginning to reach her hand out to Izuku's hair. Whoa, down, May, Rumi said not unkindly, effectively halting the barrage of questions and attempted petting. Ugh, Fian, the manic pinkhead exclaimed before turning around and slumping into her chair. Rumi leaned over. Don't worry about May. She just gets excited about quirks and support gear. Just don't touch her goggles. Ever. Huh? You mean she's a freak? Monoma said, having overheard the conversation. A week's detention. And I'm calling your parents Monoma, Miss Sato yelled. He's just mad that May laid him out once for touching her goggles, Rumi whispered. Now, let's start class, she said more calmly. After getting lunch from the cafeteria and searching for Himiko to catch up with his almost friend, he finally found her on the roof alone. She was drinking from a thermos and had a fanged smile as she closed her eyes in euphoria. This was the Himiko he remembered from all those years ago. Hello, Toga-chan, he called out in greeting. Her reaction was immediate and confusing. Her smile fell from her face and her eyes went wide before narrowing to slits as she began reaching under the skirt. Danger sense nudged in her direction. When she saw him, her face softened and she brought her hand back out from under the skirt and quickly capped her thermos. Himiko. Call me Himiko, she said. Okay, Tog Himiko, he sputtered out. Why had danger sense gone off? Do you mind if I join you? He asked, face warming. She smiled up at him, showing off her fangs. I'll never mind you joining me. He muttered a thank you as he sat on the edge of the roof near her. Nobody spoke for a few tense seconds before Izuku mustered up the courage. Why did you get pulled out of school all those years ago? He decided it would be best to get right to it. It had been bothering him for 10 years now. She didn't answer right away. He could feel fear coming off her again. He didn't understand. Why would she be so scared? At first, it was when someone had asked about the specifics of her quirk and now about why she left. Himiko, was it because of your quirk? Her eyes widened. How did you? A part of my quirk lets me know what people are feeling. It's like a sixth sense. I could feel your fear when Monoma asked about your quirk and again when I asked about why you left. Just figured they were related. He shrugged. She sighed. I kind of lied earlier when I said I have to love the person to transform. I have to drink their blood. That day at recess was when my quirk first manifested. I always want blood, especially from the people I love. I want to be more like them. I want to become them. My mom pulled me from school after she found out. Izuku pulled out a notebook and began writing. That's an amazing quirk, perfect for heroics. Do you get nutrients from blood? Do you need some now? Do you want mine? Does it have to be fresh? What if the blood is from two people? How long after you drink it can you transform? Do you get their strength or just appearance? What about quirks? What if you donated blood while transformed? What about clothes? What abu dash? He was cut off by the sound of sniffling. He looked up to see Himiko with tears running down her face despite smiling. You really think I'm not a monster? Himiko asked in a quavering voice. What? No, why would anyone think that? It's just blood. Izuku rushed to reassure her. After a decade of bullying, Izuku didn't so much as blink at the sight of blood anymore. But I'll never be normal. PSH. What's normal? Normal hasn't existed since the glowing baby was born. Izuku huffed. Himiko wiped the tears from her eyes and looked up at him like she had so long ago, with pure adoration. This time he could feel the emotion as well as see it. There was something else there too, but not something he recognized. Give me your number. I'm not losing track of you this time, Himiko demanded. After sputtering and exchanging phone numbers, they ate their lunches in comfortable silence save for the soft, cooing Himiko let out any time she drank from her thermos. Once school let out, Izuku began walking towards Ogre's gym for his after-school training when Rumi ran up beside him. Why didn't you wait for me, asshole? Rumi asked the moment she had caught up to him. He really couldn't figure out if she disliked him or not. Maybe she was just brash like Kaken had been? Hopefully, she has more in common with Kachen than Bakugu. He thought. I asked you a question, Runt. She stated, having grown impatient. Runt. He looked at her. She was taller than him, but not by much, if you didn't count the ears. Sorry, Ogre Rumi. He corrected upon seeing her glare at the formality. I'm used to leaving as fast as possible. Her face softened slightly. Bullies, huh? Well, after you get some training in, you'll be kicking their asses. She yelled while clenching her fist in the air, showing off her muscular arm. Oh no. I'm training to be a hero, and not for fighting bullies. He muttered. He felt her mood change immediately. It went from excitement at the thought of a fight to fear, borderline despair. No, you have to fight back, she cried out, before blushing enough for it to barely be seen through her tawny skin. She turned and ran ahead of him. What was that? He thought. Once Izuku stepped into Ogre's gym, he saw Rumi dressed only in small black running shorts, her small white tail sticking above the waistline, and a black sports bra showing off her well-muscled physique. She was already sweating as she wailed on a heavy bag with a flurry of kicks, her abs glistening as she twisted for each kick. There you are, Pipsqueak. Go get changed and in the ring, we'll work on the basics, Mr. Aguro said, making his presence known. And don't worry about sparring with Rumi yet. She'd kill you, he added, misinterpreting Izuku's staring for nerves. After blushing and rushing to the locker rooms and changing into his black gym shorts and a white t-shirt that red tank top, he made his way to the caged ring at the center of the gym. Mr. Aguro was waiting for him wearing black gym shorts and a white tank top. He took a look at Izuku's shirt and squinted. Huh, we match, he joked, flashing a smirk. Izuku could hear Rumi off to the side give an exasperated ugh. Down to business. We're going to get you started on boxing and wrestling. Izuku glanced over to Rumi. Not kickboxing? He questioned. Kicks are great and all, but only if they can't be countered. He looked to Rumi. With her quirk, her body is tailor-made for kicks. You, however, well, just try kicking me, Aguro said, motioning Izuku forward. Izuku went for a high kick, trying to imitate the way he had seen Rumi do, only for Aguro to catch it under his armpit. See, now I can do whatever I want with ya, he said, throwing a jab at Izuku's face with his free hand. Danger sense flared as time slowed. Black Whip activated and wrapped itself around Aguro's fist, halting it. Neat trick, kid, but no quirks during training, Aguro said as he brought his head down and headbutt Izuku before Danger Sense could trigger. Izuku lay on his back, nose bleeding as he stared at the ceiling. Seems Danger Sense and Black Whip aren't impossible to get past. Maybe it has to do with sensory overload like Haikage said. He thought, cell activation already stopping the bleeding. Learning a technique was much easier than he had first thought with the time dilation from Danger Sense. After a grueling training and workout session with Mr. Aguro and rinsing off in the showers, he walked out of the locker room with his bag slung over his shoulder to see Rumi just now finishing her workout and toweling off her sweat while eyeing him. "How the fuck do you not look tired?" she asked. That's because of my quirk. It heals, gives me more stamina, and cuts down on recovery time. Well, part of my quirk at least," she added sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. "Well, that's fucking cheating." She crossed her arms over her chest. "Is that why you're so jacked?" His face reddened. "I guess I can use it on you too if you want." She crossed the distance and was in his face immediately. "Yes, I want to be jacked like Maverick. Hurry up, hurry up." Panicking at her proximity, he activated cell activation and evolution simultaneously without noticing. Seeing his glowing hand, she grabbed it in hers. Her ruby eyes glowed with power, and after a few seconds he stopped, and she let go of his hand. "Whoa, that felt weird. I feel like I could go for a whole nother workout," she yelled, posing and flexing her arms. After saying his goodbyes, he began walking to the train station. He was walking down an empty street when he felt a similar sensation as Shimura Nana appeared before him. "Oh," he screeched in surprise. "Oh, calm down, you big baby," Nana said, covering her incorporeal ears. "It turns out I still have a fan left," Nana said while posing heroically, her hands on her hips. "Wait, you're Maverick," Izuku said, shocked. He had heard of the hero. She was well known in her time. "Huh, maybe I have 2 fans left," she said, swelling with pride. The next few days went by similarly. He ate lunch with Himiko on the roof, got his ass handed to him by Aguro after school, and used cell activation on Rumi after each workout. Rumi had been complaining about being starving all the time now and was starting to gain more muscle. It was subtle, but he noticed her muscles becoming more defined over the week. It was Friday, and Izuku was almost to school when he heard something he did not like the sound of. "I told you to do our homework, freak." A masculine voice sounded from an alley. Izuku turned the corner to see the girl that sat in front of him. Mei Rumi had called her. She was cornered against the fence in the alley by 5 upperclassmen from their school. Then the boy in the middle grabbed Mei's goggles off her head and held them high. "I'll give these back once you dash." "Don't touch my goggles," Mei roared before punching the boy in the nose hard enough for Izuku to hear the cartilage crack. As the boy reeled back, Mei snagged her goggles from him. The other 4 boys cornering her rushed forward and began pushing, punching, and kicking at her. Mei was swinging at anyone that came close enough. It was sloppy technique, but she was obviously stronger than she looked, judging by the sounds of the impacts. Before Izuku could think what he was doing, he was rushing forward, but before he could reach them, a white blur shot past him. Rumi kicked one of the boys in the ribs so hard that Izuku knew the ribs had to have broken as the boy bounced off the wall of the alley and landed in a heap. Izuku reached the group and began pulling them off Mei, who was still swinging wildly, despite the number of hits she had taken. When some of the boys began focusing on him, Danger Sense triggered, but he consciously tamped down on Black Whip when it tried activating. He didn't want to get charged with unlawful quirk use. Thanks to Danger Sense and a decade's worth of bullying, he was able to dodge their wild swings with relative ease. These guys had nothing on Bakugu's ferocity or combat instinct. The close quarters of the alley and the proximity of allies seemed to be hampering Rumi's ability to go all out. She was kicking the bullies into walls with superhuman strength, but they were ganging up on the biggest threat. Every kick she managed to land meant taking 3 punches from the others. Both girls were awe-inspiring, but they were flagging, and he was still only dodging, taking hits on occasion. "Fight back, runt," How are you going to be a hero if you can't even save yourself? Rumi yelled over the melee. She was right. He had to start fighting back at some point or he would only become a martyr, not a hero. He dodged another sloppy blow, then he struck out in turn, using every muscle, all the way from his toes to his knuckles. When his fist connected to his jaw, the bully slammed into the chain-link fence and slowly slid down it, unable to rise again. Once all of the bullies were groaning on the ground, he surveyed his surroundings. Rumi, May, and himself all sported matching split lips and bruised faces as they were bent at the knees, breathing hard. "No, you had it in you," Rumi wheezed out. After a second of silence, the three began laughing at the absurdity of it all. He activated cell activation and held out his glowing hands in offering. After explaining to May that it would heal her, they all clasped hands, healing their cuts and bruises. Nobody noticed Himiko peeking around the corner of the alley with a knife in hand, biting her bottom lip hard enough to draw the blood now trailing down her chin. Even after healing the bullies a bit, straightening their uniforms up, and getting to school, nobody noticed Himiko's glances in class. Izuku, however, did notice her radiating the same emotion from earlier in the week that he couldn't recognize. Once school let out for the weekend, he waited by the front gates for Rumi, having learned his lesson the first time. When Rumi showed up, she wasn't alone. May and Himiko were with her. Himiko found out about our scrap, and they both wanted to learn how to better defend themselves, so they're going to start training with us, as well as joining our study sessions on Sundays, Rumi announced, leaving no room for argument. He didn't miss her emphasis on using study instead of tutoring. "And don't worry, I'll be training them. It won't cut into your one-on-one time with my old man. Besides, now you'll have 3 babes to gawk at," Rumi said, letting out a belly laugh and gripping the other girl's shoulders. Sounds good to me. Them learning how to defend themselves, that is." He nervously replied, having realized there would be 2 more beautiful women wearing workout clothes around him. After arriving at Ogre's gym and changing, he saw Rumi training Himiko and May. Himiko was wearing black yoga pants that hugged her curves and a dark red tank top that exposed her toned stomach. May was wearing men's gym shorts similar to his but rolled up at the waist and an oil-stained white t-shirt that had the arms cut off, exposing her surprisingly muscled arms. Rumi smirked when she caught him looking at them. "Enough enjoying the scenery, get in the ring, pipsqueak. Today we're learning Krav Maga," Aguro said, startling Izuku. After that beating, he had never been more happy to have danger sense and cell activation. Chapter 4. It was Saturday morning as Izuku groggily watched the news while eating breakfast, hoping to catch a new hero debut. Earlier this morning in Kamino, a turf war between 2 rival gangs erupted, leaving several dead. Thankfully, no civilians were harmed. The reason behind the turf war is still unknown at this time. "Izuku, hurry up or you'll be late," called his mother, Inko. Izuku shoveled the last of his eggs into his mouth and ran out of his house and onto the outskirts of UA's campus. Today he was going to properly practice with his quirk. Deciding to use it as a warm-up, he jogged the 3 miles to Gym Gamma. With his green tank top, that red t-shirt now sticking to his body with sweat, Izuku was fanning his shirt to cool off as he walked through Gym Gamma's doors. The lights were off, and there was a small form on the floor a few feet away with a pool of red underneath it. HHH, a dead BOD. Wait. I can sense their emotions, they're still alive. I'll save you. As Izuku rushed forward, hands glowing with cell activation, the body sprang up. "I'm alive," the body yelled. The lights to the gym flicked on to reveal a small old man in a yellow hero suit in front of him, along with a shaking Tashinori and a cackling Mizu by the wall of the gym. Before anyone could explain what in the world was going on, Nana appeared in between the old man and Izuku. "I'm alive," she parroted. Silence reigned for nearly a full minute. "Kid, if this is a joke, it ain't funny," the old man grouched. "No joke, Sora. Wow, you got old and short," the ethereal Nana said, bursting into laughter. Sora's eyes watered. "Is that really you, Nana?" Nana stopped laughing and her face softened. "It's a long story, but yeah. Thanks for watching out for Toshi." Nana explained everything to Sora, or Gran Torino, who gave a subsequent beat down to All Might for not telling him about Nana right away. That's how Izuku learned that this possibly insane old man was the one that had trained All Might. He had immediately produced a notebook and asked for an autograph. Nizu had asked to borrow the notebook, and after reading the entire thing in less than 10 seconds, he declared Izuku his pupil and told him to show up tomorrow morning for personal lessons on analysis. That had been enough for everyone to look at Izuku, as if he was diagnosed as terminal. While they were finishing talking, Izuku was checking out the rest of the gym, which was now full of floor-to-ceiling concrete pillars about 10 feet apart from each other. "All right, kid, fire off one for all at me," Gran Torino said all too casually. Izuku turned to look at him like he had grown a second head. What? The only answer he got was a yellow boot flying at his face. Time slowed, and a black tendril of power wrapped itself around the boot before Izuku even knew what was happening. "Gonna be the hard way, eh? Hit it." "Nizu," Gran Torino says as he dons thermal goggles. Ominous cackling could be heard coming from somewhere behind him before the lights flipped off and danger sense nudged in every direction at once. Izuku switched to thermal vision and saw dozens of turrets warming up along the walls. In near panic, he let out a smokescreen that filled the entire gym. A staccato of gunfire erupted from every direction. Time slowed to a crawl as dozens of tendrils began flailing wildly to intercept as many of the bullets as possible. Pain, but not as much as he was expecting. They're rubber bullets. Hoping to lose the turrets in the smoke, he moved position only to hear Nizu redouble his cackling. Apparently, the turrets had thermal vision. Anytime he attempted to find cover from the relentless gunfire, Gran Torino was there to kick him back into the open before dashing off again into the maze of pillars. Okay, I need one for all, but I can't use all of it. So maybe just a little?" He began channeling OFA into his arm, green arcs of energy running along it, preparing to throw a punch where he thought Torino might be. He recalled what Mr. Aguro had said about punching with every muscle from toe to knuckle. That was it. He began channeling OFA over his entire body, through every muscle. He could feel his muscles and bones straining with the power of it. He turned it down to a level where he couldn't feel cell activation about to engage from the damage. Green energy danced along his skin as if the power itself wished for action. "If I had to guess, I would say this is about 5% of my maximum." "About time, Zygote," Gran Torino said, rocketing at him. Since the pillars were too close to each other for float, Izuku began jumping from pillar to pillar as Black Whip and Danger Sense were handling any rubber bullets he wasn't able to dodge. He was finally able to focus on Gran Torino as they ricocheted around the gym after each other. Judging by the old man's emotions, he was having the time of his life. The game of cat and mouse went on for what felt like hours, until after a boot to the face, Izuku, in an act of desperation, activated float as he jumped after Gran Torino. He outpaced Torino and finally caught him and deactivated float, rolling to the ground with his prize. After releasing his hold on him, Gran Torino jumped up, took off his goggles, and began stretching. "Not bad, kid. That was the most fun I've had in years." Izuku was doubled over, wheezing. He's not human. Training so many sides of his quirk was exhausting, even with cell activation. Gran Torino began jauntily walking over to where Toshi was clapping with a proud smile, and Nizu looked like had just found enlightenment. "Water break for 10, then we go again." Izuku was starting to understand why All Might was so scared of the man. It was starting to get dark out by the time Gran Torino called an end to training. Izuku was pretty sure he was about one more run away from dying of exhaustion. They made their way back to Toshi and Nizu. He figured that he could get away with one more quirk activation and stay conscious. "Before you go, sir, do you want me to evolve your quirk?" Gran Torino backed away from Izuku's outstretched hand. "Huh? No. I'm old and it took me forever to get a hold of my quirk the first time. I don't want to be slamming into the ceiling again. No, oh, thank you." "Is that why he's so short?" Izuku clapped his hands over his mouth as he felt his lips move. Nana reappeared and fell to her hands and knees, slapping the floor as she laughed. "I love this kid." Torino just gave a long, drawn-out sigh of exasperation. At least let me heal you a bit. It will give you some energy too," he said, hand glowing a faint green. Torino gripped Izuku's hand. Fine, fine. But if I start shooting my quirk out of my ass, I'll kill ya. Izuku choked back a snort. Why, yes, sir. He let go of Torino's hand. I should be getting back home. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll see you in the morning, Nizu. Izuku said and trudged home. Sunday afternoon, after Nizu's lessons in analysis, or as he called them, lightning rounds, Izuku made his way to Ogre's gym to meet up with Rumi, Mei, and Himiko to study for school. He was wearing tan cargo shorts and a black t-shirt that read Thinking Cap in yellow lettering. He had no idea what a study session among friends was supposed to look like, but he was excited regardless. He actually had friends to study with now. On his way to the gym, he grabbed some drinks and snacks for everyone at a local convenience store. You were supposed to bring snacks, right? Izuku walked into the gym to see Rumi wearing gray yoga pants and a black tank top, flexing in different poses as Himiko, and Mei clapped and cheered. Himiko had her hair up in messy buns and was wearing a baggy black hoodie and a dark red skirt with black thigh-high socks. Mei was wearing navy blue mechanics coveralls rolled down to her waist, exposing her black tank top. Mei and Himiko were radiating the same emotion his moms did when they looked at each other: attraction. Good for them, he thought with a small smile. As Rumi was flexing her new muscles, he wondered how she had packed on so much in just a week, even with his Quirks' help. She was incredibly athletic to begin with, but now, however, she was jacked, as she had put it. Her shoulders were pronounced and clearly defined. Her biceps and triceps bulged as she flexed, and her six-pack could be seen straining through her tight tank top, and her legs looked like she could squat a car. She was giving him her trademark grin. She caught him staring. Again. She was also giving off the same unrecognizable emotion he had sensed from Himiko earlier in the week. See something you like, Izuku? If he wasn't holding 2 bags, he would have covered his neon red face. So instead, he settled for sputtering. I brought snacks. Oh, relax. I don't mind you looking. Got to say, though, when you said your quirk helped build muscle, I didn't think it would help me gain 50 pounds in a week. It's weird. I should be even bigger, but I think I just got more dense. She paused a moment, then pointed a finger at him. If you laugh, I'll kick you. 50 pounds? Even with cell activation, that seems like too much to be possible. He scrunched his eyebrows together in thought. Do you not realize that you evolved her quirk? Nana's distinctive voice said in his head. Izuku almost dropped the bags of snacks in surprise. I did. Wait, you can talk in my head. Do, was the only response he got. I think I evolved your quirk by accident. Please don't tell anyone, he scrambled out. All 3 girls let out a collective what? Confusion crossed Himiko's face. So your quirk can let you sense people's emotions, heal, and evolve quirks? She asked incredulously. Mei grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him. What am I feeling right now? It was that same unrecognizable feeling again. He just shrugged his shoulders, face red from her proximity. I don't know either, sorry. Rumi looked at Himiko with a raised eyebrow. How do you know he can heal? Himiko's eyes widened slightly at her mistake, and Izuku sensed her nerves. I saw you guys fighting in the alley. I wanted to help, but I was scared. But Izuku, how can your quirk do so much? Izuku could sense she was lying about being scared, but why lie about that? Izuku extricated himself from Mei's shaking and set his bags down. You know dual quirks? Well, it's kind of like that, but instead of having 2 sides, my stockpiler manifests its energy in 8 sides. What the fuck? Dang, Izukin. I'll make all your babies. Everyone save for Rumi looked at Mei in shock at her forwardness. Relax, she means support gear. I think, Rumi said with a shrug. Himiko raised an eyebrow. You said 8. What are the other 5? Izuku sighed. A strength enhancement I call full cowl, flight, but I like to call it float. Prehensile tendrils I call black whip. A smokescreen that comes with thermal vision that I call smokescreen, and the ability to sense potential threats that also increases my perception of time that I call danger sense. Show me everything. Mei yelled as she shook him by his shoulders again. Rumi apparently saw his reluctance. This gym is licensed as a quirk gym, so don't worry about public usage. Okay, here goes. Mei backed up as he gently lifted off the floor, tendrils lazily extending from his palms, green arcs of energy running over his skin, and finally giving off a small puff of smoke that covered his body. "How many fingers am I holding up?" came Rumi's voice. He didn't need to see her to know she was smirking. Switching to thermal vision, he could see her flipping him off. "One." He deadpanned. Deactivating his quirk, he dropped back to the ground as the smoke cleared. Wanting to move on from himself, he turned to Himiko. "Himiko, you have a dual quirk, right? Some kind of minor cat mutation, and you're transform." She looked a bit surprised, actually. "I do. My mom had a tiger mutation quirk, and I've never met my dad. Mom said he had a similar quirk as me." He could feel the anger and pain she felt when she mentioned her mom. Izuku could tell this conversation was making her worry, most likely afraid of people finding out about her reliance on blood. Izuku decided to try and test the waters. "What do you guys think about blood quirks? They're pretty rare, and they have a certain stigma to them. They're just quirks like all the rest." "What?" Rumi asked, crossing her arms over her chest in challenge. "Oh, I bet I could make some great babies for that. I've never met anyone with one, though," Mei said, shoulders slumping. Himiko smiled at him, her pupils blown wide. "Well, you have now. I don't really like to advertise it, but I have to drink blood to use my quirk. It makes me crave blood all the time, and I tend to get a bit grumpy if I haven't had any in a while." Izuku put his chin in his hand, thinking aloud. Reliance on blood for quirk usage combined with the traits of a cat, like hunting instinct and agility for example, would make you a perfect predator. Mei got right up in Himiko's personal space, holding out her arm. "Oh, drink mine. I wanted to see." Himiko looked a bit shocked at the offer. "You'd give me your blood, just like that?" Rumi threw her arms around Himiko and Izuku's shoulders. "We all would. We're your friends, right, Izuku?" Izuku blushed and smiled brighter than the sun. He had friends. "Of course. And I can help recover the lost blood with my quirk, I think." Himiko's eyes were shimmering with unshed tears, and she had a watery smile. Rumi looked at her with a teasing smirk. "Are you purring?" Himiko playfully swatted her arm off her shoulder, a dusting of red decorating her cheeks. "Shut up." Izuku smiled at the scene. They were so adorable together. "Just ask us anytime you want blood, okay, Himiko?" She nodded and wiped the tears from her eyes. Thanks." He focused his attention on Mei. "What's your quirk, Hatsum? I know it's got to be something with your eyes, but I can't figure out what." "Call me Mei. You helped me in the alley after all. My quirk isn't very impressive. It's called Zoom. It lets me see really far away or super up close. It also makes my hand-eye coordination better to match my sight, though. It helps with working on small things." Mei shrugged dismissively. "That's really cool. You could be a great scout-type hero with that, and the hand-eye coordination could make you rival Snipe with guns. All three of you would make such a good hero team. Mei as scout/Overwatch, Himiko as infiltration, and Rumi as the fighter that can size up an opponent in an instant. You guys would be unstoppable." Izuku cheered. At the sudden silence, he paid attention to what they were feeling. Rumi seemed to feel proud and simultaneously hesitant. Himiko and Mei both felt happy and disbelief in equal measure. Himiko looked at her palms, eyes unfocused. "Me? A hero?" Mei pulled her welding goggles over her eyes. "But my quirk's weak and I'm weird. Besides, I like making things. I can just do the support course." Rumi was looking down at her clenched fist with a far-off look in her eyes. "I have to be strong on my own. I can't be weak again," she said as her ears slumped down. In frustration, Izuku subconsciously summoned Full Cowl and stomped the floor, leaving a shoe print in the concrete. "Yes, Himiko, you would make an amazing hero. Mei, your quirk isn't weak and you're not weird. You just think differently, and that's my favorite thing about you. You could always just double major and become a support-type hero like Power Loader. Rumi, you are already one of the strongest people I know, and if getting help makes you weak, then I'm the weakest of them all. You're all the most amazing people I've ever met and my first real friends, so don't talk like that." Mei had pushed her goggles back up to reveal watery eyes. Everyone was staring at him now, stunned at his outburst. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell," Izuku said, closing his eyes, waiting for the inevitable backlash. Izuku suddenly felt several pairs of hands pull him into a hug. He opened his eyes to see all three girls pushed up against him. His face warmed to the point he was sure they could feel the heat. "Thanks, Izuku." Thanks, Runt. You're allowed to touch my goggles. How the fuck did you not have friends before us? Does it have something to do with your quirk coming in late? Rumi asked as she squeezed a little harder. Izuku looked away from her questioning gaze. Why, yeah, I was misdiagnosed as quirkless, and well, have you heard of Aldra? That Quirkus school district that got shut down? You mean you went there? Mutation hate is bad enough. I can't imagine what you went through, Rumi said as she pulled him in closer. It was that blonde asshole from 10 years ago, wasn't it? Himiko asked, voice dangerously low. Tears came unbidden to his eyes as he nodded. Who? May asked, starting to get lost. Himiko snarled as her eyes narrowed. A bully. Izukin and I went to the same elementary school, and the day my quirk came in, this blonde asshole called me a villain and tried to attack me, but Izukin saved me. He's been bullying you all this time, hasn't he? Another nod. Emma cut him. I'll kick the shit out of him. I'll blow him up. He wasn't sure if he should be worried or thankful that empathy registered all those as truth. Thanks. He pulled himself from the hug. Can I evolve your quirks? He asked, extending two glowing hands to May and Himiko. They both smiled, and each took a hand. Two sets of yellow eyes glowed with power. May began looking all over the room, her eyes changing from yellow to red to black to green. Oh, I can see in thermal, X-ray, and night vision. I'm going to make so many babies. She pulled him into a crushing hug, lifting him off his feet. Thanks, Izuku. Rumi held out her arm to Himiko. You need blood, right? Go ahead. Himiko's smile was full of teeth as she took the offered arm. I can make my saliva produce an anesthetic, so this shouldn't hurt. And don't worry about diseases, my quirk takes care of that. She let her chin-length tongue out of her mouth and licked a spot on Rumi's forearm before biting down. After a few seconds, Himiko unattached and licked off the remaining blood before smiling up at Rumi. Izuku moved closer and brushed a glowing hand over the bite, healing it. Himiko stepped back as gray sludge began covering her. The sludge solidified into a mirrored Rumi wearing Himiko's clothes. The new Rumi squatted down and jumped all the way up to the vaulted ceiling with little effort and brushed her fingers across it. Izuku had to look away to avoid seeing under her skirt. She landed and hugged the other Rumi tightly. I can use other people's quirks now. You're so strong, Rumi. She pulled back and ran her hands all over her new body. And hot, gray goop began falling off of her to reveal Himiko again. She glomped onto Izuku. Thanks, Izukin. He felt something sharp poking where her fingers were. Ow, ow, ow. She let go and looked at her hands to reveal pointed black nails where short, unpainted nails had been. I have claws now. She bent down, claws extending to 2 inches, and dragged them along the concrete, claws cutting through it like warm butter. I'm glad you're happy, but we should probably study. After a collective groan, they went up to Rumi's room to study. Her room was fairly large. It had a beat-up leather couch, an old TV, different types of weights in a corner along with a human-shaped boxing bag, a microwave, mini fridge, kettle, and a lot of Nana's merch. Girls got taste, Nana said inside his head. He could hear her smirking. Wow, this is basically an apartment. It's so nice, Himiko said, surprised. It was big, but small even compared to the smaller apartments, and it definitely wasn't very fancy. Something about how surprised Himiko was acting bothered him. Is it bigger than where you live with your mom? Himiko shrugged. I don't live with my mom anymore. I actually live with my grandma. Our place is about the same size. He could tell she was lying about living with her grandma, but telling the truth about not living with her mom, which was concerning. Himiko, I'm an empath. You can't lie to me, remember? You don't have to tell me everything if you don't want to, but please answer me this. Are you safe where you're living? Himiko's eyes widened, not expecting to be caught. I'm safe where I'm living, she said, careful of her wording. Rumi put a hand on her shoulder. Come to us if that changes. Yeah, May yelled, throwing a fist into the air. Izuku gave her a megawatt smile. Good, I don't want to lose you again. After a few hours of studying, they decided to watch a movie before everyone went home. Himiko wanted to watch a horror movie. May wanted sci-fi, while Rumi wanted anything with fighting. Izuku didn't mind either way, but found an old gory sci-fi called Aliens, which seemed to satisfy everyone. Izuku was sitting on the far left of the couch next to Himiko, and Rumi was sitting on the opposite end next to Mei. Partway through the movie, while they were eating the snacks that Izuku had brought, Himiko turned to him, apprehension rolling off of her. "Can I have some blood?" she asked with a blush dusting her cheeks. He smiled at her reticence. Of course. Her pupils blew wide until they were only black rimmed with yellow. "Thanks, Izuku. Tap me if you get lightheaded." He was about to offer her his arm like Rumi had when he felt a tongue graze his neck just above his clavicle. Then he felt soft lips and heard the faint sound of sucking. He looked down to see Himiko, eyes closed, lips connected to his neck, but no pain, and he could both feel and hear her purring. He blushed so hard he could hear her suction increase. After a few minutes, and still not feeling lightheaded, she stopped sucking, and with a pop, she disconnected, then licked the blood away. The 4 fang marks healed over almost immediately, leaving a scar that would fade. She looked up at him with ecstasy written on her features, a wide fanged smile, and blood on her lips. "My hero," she said sleepily. She closed her eyes once more and rested her head on his shoulder before resuming purring as she fell asleep. After a minute of fighting down his blush and something, he looked over to where Rumi and Mei were to see if they had seen the whole thing. Rumi was giving him a knowing smirk as Mei lightly snored on her shoulder, goggles over her eyes. She said it was too bright. "We'll wake them once the movie's over," she whispered. Later that night, Himiko skipped through the door of her apartment. It was smaller than Rumi's room and completely empty save for appliances. She swung open the fridge. Inside was convenience store food and dozens of blood bags. Some were labeled with names, several read Grandma. "Thanks to Izuku, these should last me a while." She moved over to the closet and opened it. She grabbed out her rolled-up futon, and underneath it was a duffel bag with cash spilling out of it. "All this should last until 3rd year. I should send a thank you letter to those idiot gangs in Kamino," she said, laughing to herself. She rolled out her futon and stripped before laying down. She reached for the ceiling and flexed her fingers, claws extending. She smiled wide, admiring them. "So pretty. Izuku really is the best. Rumi and Mei are pretty cute too, though," she said as her other hand traveled down her body lower and lower. Chapter 5. A week after their first study session together, Izuku, Rumi, and Himiko were on their way to Mei's place to check on her and study there instead since she wasn't answering her phone. Himiko bumped shoulders with Rumi. "So how do you know where Mei lives?" Rumi grinned at the shorter girl but kept their shoulders connected. "I've known Mei for a while now. This isn't the first time I've had to check on her. She's probably just hyper-fixated on something." Izuku felt warm at the sight of the two girls so comfortable around each other. "Does she do this often?" Rumi shrugged before grabbing him by the arm and pulling him closer, his shoulder connecting now too as they walked. "I guess. She gets tunnel vision sometimes when it comes to her special interests." Himiko looked up at Rumi and scrunched her eyebrows together. "Special interests? Like hobbies?" Rumi seemed a bit reluctant, but answered with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Kind of. It's not my place to say, but Mei trusts you too, so I'll tell you. Mei is on the autism spectrum. A special interest is like a hobby, but it's more than that, it's a passion. Like you said before, Izuku, she has a different way of thinking, but that's not all. Social skills for her are a muscle she has to train. For what most do automatically, she has to do manually. I've always been pretty blunt, so she sometimes comes to me when she has questions about something most people would just pussyfoot around with." Izuku was smiling bright as the sun at the rabbit girl. "It's no wonder she loves you." He clapped his hands over his mouth when he realized he just outed Mei's internal feelings. Rumi stopped dead in her tracks and grabbed Izuku by his shoulders, staring down at him slightly. "What? How do you know? Are you sure?" Releasing his treacherous mouth, he responded, "I'm an empath, remember? When she looks at you, I can feel your mutual attraction." Rumi yanked him into a crushing hug. "Thank you. Lately she's been asking me about a warm feeling that she's never had before, but I didn't want to just tell her that she's attracted to me." Himiko shimmied her way into the hug. "Why not?" Rumi extended her arm to include Himiko too. "Because what if I was wrong? She trusts me and would just believe me. I don't have an empath quirk. What if I told her that I loved her and that she loved me back, but I was wrong?" Himiko began purring and nuzzled her head into Rumi. You know, for how tough you are, you're quite the softie. Rumi pulled herself from the hug and pointed accusingly at Himiko. If you tell anyone, I'll scissor lock your head next time we spar. Lucky Izuku thought as he focused all his willpower on not blushing. Himiko grinned full of teeth. Don't threaten me with a good time. Rumi blushed enough for it to actually be seen through her thin skin and sputtered, Come on, as she began walking again, this time at a faster pace. Himiko giggled and looped her arm around Izuku's as they followed. They caught up to Rumi as she was knocking on the door of a house that didn't stand out from the others surrounding it except for the loud noises coming from behind it. The door swung open to reveal a woman that looked incredibly similar to May, just older and with red dreadlocks instead of pink that were tied into a braid that hung over her shoulder. The woman hugged Rumi immediately, then held her by the shoulders. Rumi, dear, come to check on my little gremlin, she said affectionately. Hi, Miss Hatsum. Yeah, we were supposed to have a study session, but we couldn't reach her, so we decided to bring it to her. Miss Hatsum looked past Rumi and noticed Himiko and Izuku. Oh, you must be Izuku and Himiko then. Maime told me so much about you already. I'm so glad she has such good friends now. She elbowed Rumi in the ribs and waggled her eyebrows. Maybe more than friends? We're going to go find May now, Rumi said as she headed into the house as Ms. Hatsum cackled in a very May-like fashion. The three made their way through the house and into the backyard where a large workshop was. A cacophony of sounds could be heard coming from the structure. Rumi approached the large steel doors with Izuku and Himiko on either side. Danger sense triggered, and before Izuku could react, the metal door blew open in an explosion of smoke. All three were knocked bodily to the ground. There was something soft on top of them. You're all here. Why are you here? Oh, you're comfy. May all but screamed in their collective faces. Rumi groaned and held her hands over her ears. Ouch. Hi, May. We came to study with you. As they all untangled themselves from the heap, Izuku noticed the bags under May's eyes. May, when was the last time you slept?